Andrew.
Hey, Alex.
What's this?
This is Brains on the Outside.
What's that?
Well, Brains on the Outside, Alex, is a podcast about celebrating creativity through ridiculous business ideas.
That's right. Each week we come up with crazy, ridiculous, amazing, fabulous, bananas ideas like, what if instead of having a regular prime minister, everybody got to be prime minister for 5 minutes every year?
I'm not sure that would fix democracy or break it even further, but
it's already so broken, isn't it? So
gotta try new things.
Yeah, that's worth it. What are we doing this week, Andrew?
Well, this is episode, I think, 65. So we've done this for over a year. And over that time, though we thought the concept of the show was so simple, ridiculous business ideas, we've spun out and we've made things too complicated for ourselves. So
that is an understatement we have disappeared so far up our own backsides trying to work out what's funny and what's good that I think we're just actually dead now. I think we're an Ouroboros.
So the first thing is, please get in contact with us and let us know what parts of the show you like, what bits you don't think work, what are the bits that make you come back and keep listening, because we have hundreds of listeners every month, sometimes thousands. So it'd be great to know exactly what works, because we're kind of entering into a reboot era, season 2. And we don't want to fuck this one up too.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of had a kind of failed season 2, didn't we? And that sort of crashed into the ground after a single episode.
Waited with so much hope, though.
Yeah, perfecting the pitch did not go as we expected.
I'd forgotten that even existed. But this episode is actually all about other fantastic podcast ideas. The sort of things that we've come up with as distractions from this show. And we're going to shake them all out, and you can use them for your podcast if you want. Or maybe you'll hear one and go, well, that's actually way better than what you're doing right now. Ditch this and do that. I hope you don't say that, though, because that would really derail us even further.
It's true. So, Andrew, if I just go back across our history of this podcast, we started out as a show about exploring creativity through ridiculous business ideas. We've had many, many, many versions of Brains on there that I think we should talk about.
Oh, dear.
There was,
yeah.
Brains on the Inside was the very first one. And there is a secret episode of Brains on the Inside that exists that no one's allowed to listen to.
It's actually on Buzzsprout. It has a release date attached to it, and every software have to go and delete the release date and push it forward a few months in case it accidentally is released into the world. What's Brains on the Inside?
Brains on the Inside was the actual podcast about actually exploring creativity through ridiculous business ideas, where we would go over, in hindsight, in retrospect, the ideas that we'd come up with in Brains on the Outside in a kind of slightly more serious exploration of creativity way.
So more like how does creativity work? How do you come up with a design?
Yeah.
Where did you get these ideas from?
Yes. The thing was, it wasn't funny.
Wasn't funny, and it was but we talked about getting up your own butt, and that was
yeah, truly. Then we had another show called Brains on the Inside, which was a podcast within a podcast.
That's a good idea, though.
Yeah, it was a good idea. Stolen directly from a much better show than ours.
Yeah.
The podcast within a podcast, Brains on the Inside, was where we would put our inside brains on, and then we would explore the idea in a very critical way. We actually managed that, I think, at least twice or 3 times.
Twice. I think the core of that was driven by us getting feedback, which was, you never criticize each other's ideas. You're always on board, which I'm not even sure is good feedback, but we tried to address that.
Yeah, there's moments where we kind of fell into that, and it was quite funny, but yeah. We sort of forgot about that as well.
I think the problem is, I just sincerely like your stupid ideas. I don't think they are bad. I don't know why people would want to criticize them.
Yeah, it's true. Then there was Brains on the Other Side, which was a really high concept, ridiculous podcast.
Yeah, this was, we listened to one episode of the Beef and Dairy Network podcast, a show set in this weird alternate universe where people just take beef and dairy news really seriously, and that really ruined us.
It did. That show is so good. If you don't listen to it, you should. It's so surreal and weird and amazing. Brains on the Other Side was a podcast set in a universe where all of the Brains on the Outside ideas actually existed. And it was going to be interviews with people who had used those services, or the CEOs of those services, or news articles about accidents that had happened using food tubes, or like consumers of the product. I think it was actually a really good idea. I really, think it's a great idea. Liked that one. Yeah.
Why do you think it? Why isn't this show that now? What held us back from just doing that?
I think it's the time. I think it's the time required to make that work.
I think, though, coming up with stupid ideas and doing it like this is time consuming. I think actually writing it, having a written comedy would be even more time consuming for us.
Even if we made it, it's like, it's still improv, it still would have been a lot of more effort. Also, I think people, some of the feedback we had was that the show's pretty confusing as well about what it actually is. Sometimes the bits end up with us being in the universe where that product already exists. Look at Magic 8.1 Boil or food tubes. And sometimes we are just talking about pitching an idea to an imaginary investor. And sometimes we're just talking about an idea.
And sometimes we have a meta episode about the ideas we have for podcasts.
Yeah.
So, listener, if you're listening, you might see that a lack of ideas isn't our problem. Good constructive feedback is what we need to base our entire lives and self-worth on right now. So please tell us.
Please be our friends.
Alex, if somebody wanted to get in contact with us, how would they do that?
The best way to do that, Andrew, is through our email address, which is brainsontheoutside@gmail.com.
Excellent. Alex, do you have any other podcast ideas?
Yeah, I have a lot of other podcast ideas, surprisingly enough, loads. Andrew. Yeah.
I have
holy
loads.
Shit. I think one of my all-time favorites, and I'm kind of loath to give this away, but I'm going to do it anyway in case someone goes and makes it. I really wanted to make a show that ran in time, a fiction show that ran in time concurrently with the whole of Friends. And it was the telephone calls between two friends of the friends who are never seen on screen, where they'd phone up and complain about the friends.
Just slagging off Ross. So there'd be one episode of your show for one episode of Friends.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly that.
Alex, this makes you sound like a Friends superfan. Would you classify yourself as a Friends superfan?
I don't think I classify myself as a Friends superfan. I like Friends as much as the next person, but I like podcasts a lot. And I like the idea of springboarding off somebody else's comedy to make my own comedy better.
I like the bit a lot.
Yeah. You'd be like, and you'll never guess what Ross did this week.
I mean, some of the friends, though, I think they are pretty good friends. And I think people overplay how bad friends they are, which I think they are pretty good friends. But I think they are also sometimes real pieces of work.
Yeah.
You don't really get people digging into like the casual homophobia and racism that goes on the show enough.
Sucks.
And I think some other characters there just be like, you'll never guess what Ross just said last week. You'll never guess.
Yeah. I think one of the things that holds me back from making that is like, that's pretty much the second whitest TV show in the world. And for two white.
What's the first?
Gilmore Girls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But for two white dudes to come along and make a podcast about that show, I think it's just a little bit too much. What about you, Andrew? What ideas for podcast you got?
I had the idea of a podcast where I would play the game Crusader Kings 3. Crusader Kings 3 is like a really in-depth history simulator. So you can pick like, oh, I want to go back to this year and fight in this war. And the game is really in-depth. So you can like really have a large effect on the geopolitical situation in Europe over the course of hundreds of years. Oh. So my idea was I would play this game. My podcast would be about my playthrough, but the podcast would be entirely deadpan. It would present it as if it was real history. And at no point I would let anybody know I was just playing a game. So it would start off like kind of similar to Scottish history, but little bits would slowly change until by the time you got to episode 10, history was entirely different, but I would never break. I would never let anybody know that this wasn't real. If people wrote in being like, you're wrong, I'd be like, no, you're wrong. read the history books. You believe everything Wikipedia tells you?
I absolutely love that idea. I think it's amazing. I think there's so many applications of it as well. Like you could do it in such a lot of different. There's so many games that you could play that you could then make a podcast, serious podcast about. Like like the setting up of a hospital in 2 Point Hospital or Theme Hospital, and just report on what happened in the hospital as if it was news,
as if it was like a BBC news night documentary being like, look at the fucking state of the NHS.
Yeah. 17 people have died here of having light bulbs for a head.
I just love like alt history and things being super deadpan.
Oh yeah.
I love that sort of vibe and tone.
Yeah.
So my other idea was, which combines my other thing I enjoy, which is classic and retro video games, was a game podcast, a game review podcast, but we would be religiously set in like 1988, the day before the NES came out. So we'd review NES games in real time, like the first batch come out, Mario 1 would come out and we'd review that, but we'd have to be dedicated to the idea that this was, in fact, 1988. All the references we'd make, all the pop culture we'd have to talk about would be from that year. We'd be like, oh, have you seen Back to the Future 3 today? I'd be like, yeah, it's great.
I love that. That's really, really good.
Then every month you get new games. You'd be like, oh, Mega Man 2's out now, or whatever, and you slowly creep forward through time.
It's completely amazing. I love that idea of playing with time on a podcast. Like one of the ideas I had was about a podcast that existed only on a single day. Like, so the podcast would come out every week, but every week it would be as though it was the same day again, and it would slowly subvert, like you'd enter a totally alternative history because it would slowly change over time. Like that day was from a parallel universe. I don't know that I've explained that very well.
Also, like, but you're seeing the same day over and over again.
Yeah,
not from different perspectives, but like, oh, you're in multiverse 616, and now you're in multiverse 666, and now you're slowly
exactly every time
micro changes.
Yeah, exactly, and it would be the same people in each of those multiverses reporting the news.
Yeah,
for the day.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah,
I like
a lot of fun with that.
Fake news, not in the Trumpian dystopian way, but
yeah, like fictional kind of a fictional thing. Yeah, that'd be really nice. I like that a lot. I like the idea of really deadpanning stuff that doesn't exist as well. Like there was that was it Scorsese film?
Oh God, yeah. What was it called?
I can't remember what it was called.
Yes.
It's existed.
About gangsters, and it's really, really popular on Tumblr, but somehow lots of movie critics haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. I just love a podcast that's based on an idea like that, or on a conspiracy that never happened, and it's just so like outlandish, but really works hard to prove that it was true. I guess that is every conspiracy theory. Right?
There is something very funny there, but being like, I don't know, like, yeah, introducing a conspiracy and pretending it has this long and storied history.
Yeah.
Linking it back to famous events, and then just not accepting that it is at all invented 2 minutes ago by you.
Yeah.
Because you get a couple people in, you get a couple of conspiracy people in, and all of a sudden you have quite a lot of credibility is not the right word, but credibility within that community.
Traction.
I think about this a lot, starting a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And I could do that via the medium of podcast. And I think there's not many times in my life where this is really useful. Well, that's kind of underselling it. But I do have a doctorate in particle physics. And I think like that would, oh my God, they would eat that up in the conspiracy community if you were like, yeah, I have a doctorate in high energy theoretical particle physics. And did you know that there's actually a wormhole at the center of the Earth where ninth dimensional aliens enter and seed your brain's thoughts, so you are more obedient to government propaganda?
You could totally get away with that. You've got the charm and the charisma to make it happen.
you'd have to write it out in really scientific, technical language as well. So they were like,
Oh,
oh shit,
yeah.
this person really knows what they're talking about. And then you do a 10-part podcast expose on the evil conspiracies of CERN. And I think that'd be pretty good.
That's nice.
I think I would have my PhD revoked, though.
At some point, yeah. But then you just keep using the letters. No one's going to know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know? We also had an idea called the Everything Review, where we were going to review literally everything. We were going to make a bracket out of everything. And then for the winners of every bracket, we were going to bracket those brackets. So one episode we had planned was to review every Marvel superhero, and then the next episode we had planned after that was every herb.
Yeah, yes, because I remember talking about this, and there'd be some way of combining it all, so you'd have eventually a ranked list of everything. This show, I believe the history of the show is that we did this because we couldn't find time to make that show, actually.
Yeah.
So this was kind of the spin-off show.
Yeah, this was the sub-show from that show. Yeah, that was a really good one. I really wanted to know what was better, like which pizza topping was the best, and then the best pizza topping versus the best herb versus the best superhero versus the best pair of shoes.
There's something interesting in the absurdity of being like, yeah, let's compare like the best toilet paper to the best American president. Obviously there's going to be a winner. Taking it really seriously.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it was really important. We had to have a full rank list of absolutely everything. Yeah.
Everything review. Alex, we've had 65 episodes of this podcast. Now, obviously, we're approaching the funniest number of them all, and we'll have something special for that. But do you have any hopes, dreams, or thoughts in the next 65 episodes?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I hope that we reach a slightly higher number of listeners on a regular basis. I hope that we also achieve our ultimate goal of extracting our heads from our own bottoms and understanding that what the podcast should actually be. That's kind of my biggest goal for the next year, is that.
I imagine like we have all this podcast inside Brains on the Outside, and if we can chisel it down to its nice juicy core, we'll have a pretty good show. Which is where, listener, you could help us by telling us what bits of the show actually works.
Please tell us what bits of the show are good. If someone wanted to tell us what bits of the show are good, Andrew, what would they do?
Well, they would contact us on our email address, brainsontheoutside@gmail.com. And if they did, we'd send you stuff. We'd send you merch.
Yeah, we'd send you beautiful stickers. Wonderful stickers. They're really good. Alternatively, if you just see us wandering about aimlessly sobbing about how we don't know what our podcast is, feel free to just give us a pat on the shoulder or a little hug if it's appropriate.
Nice. A little attaboy. Or even better, a 5-star review in the podcast app of your choice.
Oh yeah, or introduce us to all of your friends, both in real life and also in podcast life.
Yes, via the medium of sending them a link to the show on the podcast app of your choice. That'd be great.
That would be the best. That would be wonderful.
A bit in my brain is having an episode dedicated to us trying to make this show better. In some sense, egotistical, and maybe, but desperate times call for desperate measures.
Truly, yeah, it's true.
Do you have one final business idea, Alex?
Do you know what, Andrew? I actually do. So you know how you can get kit cars that people spend like years making a kit car? Yeah. Why do you not get kit anything else? I want to kit make a microwave from scratch.
That's actually excellent. Yeah.
Keep your brain on the outside.
Keep your brain on the outside.